Hi, this is Dan Heisman, Philly tutor for Chess FM. This is the Improve Your Chess video series for ICC members. In today's game, we're going to look at a 45-45 game played here on the ICC. Both players rated around 1400. All right, white opens up e4, and black plays a Pirtz defense d6. Now, black has 20 legal moves, and most of them allow white to play the normal move d4 on the next move. Obviously, there's a lot of the more common ones that don't. For instance, c5 means that d4 is legal, but you're probably going to have to play the Mora Gambit if you do, because if you recapture the queen, of course, then you're just losing time to knight c6. But d6 is one of those moves where white can play d4, and as a general rule, if you can safely do so, you should set up this kind of little center here with e4, d4. White instead plays very fast, like 2 seconds, and he brings his knight out to f3, which is not unreasonable, but it's a pretty rare move at a high level. All right, so now black has a lot of things he can do since white didn't play d4. He can go into one of the main lines of the Sicilian with c5. He can play e5 and go into a Philidors. He can simply attack the pawn, which is much in doing with the Pirtz defense, to play knight f6 and hit the pawn, or he could even fianchetto first, although probably hitting the pawn with knight f6 might be a little more accurate. Instead, he plays a very strange move. He plays bishop to g4. Now, this move kind of triggered in my mind that, a lot of times when you teach lower-rated players, or especially ones that are experienced, and you tell them certain things like, knights before bishops, unless you're absolutely sure, unless this is a book position. Well, this is not a book position for black. I'm pretty sure if he plays the Pirtz that, he's not used to white playing knight f3. You should try to follow these principles. For some reason, stronger players, when they know principles and they can weigh them in their mind, follow them as best they can. And weaker players have a tendency to know the same principles, but to not follow them for some strange reason. And of course, that just gets you into trouble. And here, we not only have knights before bishops, but in his book, Common Sense in Chess, Emanuel Lasker says, don't pin the knight to the queen before your opponent's castled, because he can just play like h3. And if he has to, on bishop h5, he can play g4. Black's move violates all these principles, and he took a little bit of time, but you'd think he would think, oh, knights before bishops, or I don't know what to do here, so maybe I should follow some principles. Also, another principle, a third principle, would be develop the pieces on the side you're going to castle before the pieces that you're not. Well, if you're a Pirtz player, you're used to development that looks something like this. Knight f6, knight c3, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, bishop e2, castle, one of the classical lines of the Pirtz. And here, black's following all the principles. He's developing the pieces on the side that he's going to castle, and he brings the knight out first, and he castles as soon as he can. And that bishop that he brought out stays here for a while. And yeah, now bringing the bishop out on the next move is much more reasonable than doing it right away. All right, so back to the game. White just plays the passive bishop to e2. He certainly doesn't have to do that. He could attack the bishop with h3. He could play d4. More aggressive ways of placing his pieces than this. All right, so black brings out his knight and hits the pawn. White guards it. And black now goes into a Sicilian-looking position. Well, one advantage of having the bishop on g4 now is he can give up the bishop pair to try to get control over d4 if white doesn't play d4 right away. So white does play d4 right away. And of course, here we have another principle, which is if your opponent breaks with a central pawn, and you can take with a side pawn, and even sometimes with a central pawn, and he can't take back with a pawn, then you should almost always do so. So here, the computer's #1 move, and the main idea in the Sicilian, open Sicilian, is to take the pawn. Everything else doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. I mean, I guess black could play queen to a5 or something.